Hi, I'm Mallory Whitfield, and today I'm going to be speaking with my friend Olivia Omega about how to build a personal brand. Olivia is a branding strategist and marketing expert with over 20 years of experience in the field. She consults about branding and marketing, and I met her at a conference for online entrepreneurs, lifestyle bloggers, and she was talking about her experience of going on the Ellen DeGeneres show. She is the real deal. She's also a TEDx speaker and a passionate advocate for diversity and inclusion, which I am here for. Olivia is amazing. She's going to share some juicy tidbits with you in this interview. So let's go. Hi, Olivia. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So today we're going to talk about personal branding because I know that's something you're an expert in and you have more than 20 years of experience in all sorts of branding. So take us back to the beginning. How did you get interested in the world of branding and how did you start building your own personal brand?
I think I first got interested in marketing in high school, and I was a part of a club called DECA. I don't know if you've heard of that club, but it's basically a marketing and business club. And right before that, so I would say my freshman year in high school, I wanted to be a pediatrician really badly. I don't know exactly why. And I took biology and started taking these science classes, which just didn't spark any emotion in me. But something that I loved was watching Super Bowl commercials. I don't know, and analyzing the commercials and stuff. So I went into this marketing business club in high school. And from that moment on, I was like, I know this is what I want to do from an advertising standpoint. And then it wasn't until in college, I majored in marketing and started at an agency that was really focused on brand positioning. And so until then, end of college, maybe, I didn't really know. I knew what we all know what a brand is, but I didn't know what brand positioning was and brand strategy. And so while I thought I wanted to go into this world of advertising and marketing, I really ended up, I always say I was kind of born and raised in this notion of brand strategy. So I started doing that at an agency just at the end of college and graduated and stayed there for almost 10 years, learning everything I could and just soaking in brand strategy. And then after about 10 years or so, I left there and started my own consultancy. And at the time, my kids were babies. So I was doing lots of mom and baby stuff and working with mom and baby products and people and a lot of moms like myself who were wanting to start a business. And so that's when things kind of shifted to personal branding, where it's taking the concepts that I learned on branding, big consumer packaged goods, brands, and applying them to people and individuals.
That's awesome. And so your personal brand kind of started in this one place from you being a mom. What advice would you have for somebody who wants to start building their personal brand and doesn't really have any idea what brand strategy means or what brand positioning even means?
I would say to examine your core values, like your own personal values. So as people, especially if you're in the service industry, if you're a consultant or a coach, you're bringing all of your filters, right? Your experiences, the things you love, the things you don't, to this experience with your client. So I would start by examining your heart and looking at what are your own core personal values? What do you believe in? What excites you? How does that transfer into the products and services you offer? And so once you've got that kind of anchoring down, then everything that you say and do from a marketing and branding perspective, the language you have on your website, the photos that you have taken of you, all of these things can then tie back to who you are at your core.
Yeah. And I know you use the word authenticity and authentic a lot, which is something that I always use too whenever I'm talking about personal branding. And I think it's really important. In terms of your own personal brand, can you give us examples of how that authenticity and your core values kind of show up in your own personal brand?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll say this too. Just as we shift and change and evolve and grow as human beings, our personal brand, because it's so tied to who we are, will shift and change and grow throughout different stages and phases of life. So, back in the day when I was, in that mom baby world, my kids were babies. And I was a stay-at-home mom for a super little small stint there before I launched a company and all of that. And so while at the core of who I am, my values haven't fully changed, but the way I express it as a brand and as my personal brand has shifted and changed over the years. And a couple examples of that are simply just when I was a mom with babies, the way I dressed and my hair and my makeup, like all of that was different. And some of it had to do with a lack of time and a lack of priority and stuff like that. But I remember kind of shifting out of that a little bit. My kids were getting older. I started to, instead of being in the mom baby product world, I started to shift a little bit more into coaching and consulting. And I had to do this photo shoot. And it was the first photo shoot that I had personally ever done. I want to say this was 7 or 8 years ago. And I brought a friend with me, and I was like, I'm going to bring this friend because she will be honest and she will call me out and she will make me laugh and she'll push me to not shy away from, fully expressing myself in the shoot. And so she at one point whips out her makeup bag and she's like, here, put this on. And it was red lipstick. And I was like, what? I was like, no, never. And I was like, prior to that, just lip gloss and very subdued tones and whatever. And I was like, no, red lipstick is for fast women. And, I don't know what I was thinking at the time. I don't want to be a whore. I don't want to look like a whore in my photo shoot and all this stuff. But we put the red lipstick on and the pictures turned out really well. And so from that point on, and I was also going through a divorce, there were so many things happening. And I feel like the shift in kind of metamorphosis of who I was, that red lipstick started to become the staple and the thing that I could leverage because I started to get comfortable with it. It made me feel powerful. I could stand out. And now it's my absolute go-to always. So things just shift and change. And that's very, very brand image centric, right? How we express ourselves outwardly, visually.
So I know that you've talked a lot about this kind of personal growth and learning from failure. I remember the first time I ever met you, you were speaking at a conference called Alt Summit and talking about some, business failures that you'd experienced and kind of what you learn behind, what people see on the forefront versus what goes on behind the scenes. I know you were sharing an example of you went on the Ellen show, right? And then there was a lot of stuff that people don't know. So can you share more about if people are feeling they're becoming somebody different, the personal brand is shifting. How do you deal with that stuff?
I think a lot of it is just you learn and deal by doing and by practicing. And so I always check myself and make sure that the people who are following me realize that I'm a human being. And there's lots of perfectionism on social media platforms, and especially Instagram and some others that are very visual. And so I will always make sure to do a step back and to let people into a little bit of that vulnerability of, this is who I am, or this is who I really am, just so that I can continue to be relatable. I want people to realize there are other women out there who are trying to build a business whose marriages are also falling apart at the same time, or who are trying to build a business and they are having, issues raising their kids, or they have a special needs child, or they're trying to build a business and they can barely feed their family. Those are all real situations and scenarios that I've been through. So I would just encourage people to always take a step back and almost do a audit or evaluation. Am I really coming through as the person I want, or am I portraying something that isn't authentic because it is so perfectly curated and primed and put together?
Yeah. And I think that sort of inauthenticity does crop up a lot of times in visual mediums like Instagram. Right. But I know for you, you've done a lot of speaking. I saw you speak at Alt Summit. I know you've done a TEDx talk and you have a new podcast, right? So how does public speaking play into this? Is that something that people who really want to build a personal brand, do you think they should consider? Or, I think there's opportunity there to be more authentic in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. Public speaking goes back to like middle school and high school, and where we had these challenges. We had to stand up in front of the class and actually present a thought out idea, and literally public speaking is the number one fear of people in general. It's like one of the top fears. And so I think for two reasons, speaking is really great to kind of overcome that a little bit, so that whether you're up in front speaking at a conference, or if you have to stand up in front of a room, a boardroom, and present an idea, or you're trying to sell your product into a store, whatever that might be, I think just that the notion of being able to stand up confidently, project an idea and bring humor to that, or whatever that might feels right for you, is very important in building a brand. It allows you to provide depth to who you are. We are very much and this is why video is so cool and important as well, but we are can become one dimensional if we're relying simply on pictures on our website, pictures on Instagram, and Facebook and text. And if that's the only way people can get to know us and who we are and what we have to offer, then we're really missing this whole depth of voice and personality. Something that you do really well is portraying your personality on stage and character, and so people can't really get to know us in the way that we would like to like, know, and trust us, and to hire us, if we aren't leveraging speaking and video to the fullest.
Yeah. Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit more about your new podcast? Because I know that's a really authentic expression of you and your personal brand, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I've had it on my heart to start a pod, and it wasn't even a podcast. It really is just building my YouTube channel and really getting a message out that's aside from my business focus of personal branding, but also ties into my faith and what I believe, and just encouraging entrepreneurs to kind of let go and trust God as we kind of go through this journey. And the thing about what's interesting about YouTube is the way life can kind of work. I was finding it difficult to set aside the time to record videos like I needed to. And so I would batch, I'm sure you're working on this too, but like batch a bunch of videos, like trying to get them, a bunch done in one day, so you could hype yourself up and be like, okay, go, go, go. And so my thought was, in expanding to a podcast, would be to open up another medium and to make it so that as things drop into my heart, and this could be like 5 a.m., it could be midnight, it could be all these different things after a yoga class where you're just like getting all of the rush of emotion and feels. Can I flip on my phone and quickly record an audio and turn that into a podcast? So that's what I did. And I started that in April, and it's called God is CEO. And it's really taking God and putting him in the driver's seat of our business, allowing him to be chief executive officer, and just really taking cues from that, download, versus what I've done in the past in my business is God being kind of an afterthought, or me telling God this is what I'm going to do with my business, versus getting that advisement and kind of direction and discernment.
Yeah. Yeah. And because I know for you, your faith is a big part of who you are, right? Like I am not necessarily that way. So that's not a part of my brand, but I know that for you it is. But yet sometimes we have these ideas about like what should be part of business, but I think that's all getting shaken up a little bit right now. Like people kind of expect from even big brands like Nike or Ben and Jerry's, sort of like, where do they stand about something? So can you speak to that sort of thing? Like, are there things that brands, like personal brands, like are they things we shouldn't be doing online as part of our brand or not? Or how do you feel?
A great question. It's a really good question. And I remember talking about this years ago, I'm sure 8 years ago, whereas I feel like it's now, like you said, things are being shaken up, and it's now kind of settling in that at the end of the day, especially for individuals, and we could talk about big corporations, but for individuals, our brand and our personal are melded together. And and as much as we want to keep them separate, your values and what you do as a human being impacts the people that you serve. And so when we kind of release that notion of keeping them separate, and we bring them together to say, this is me personally, this is me professionally, but this is how they work together, it actually builds a stronger brand and it sets you apart. If we were to all go out there and say, I am a business coach, I'm a woman and I'm a mom, and we leave it at that, how many business coach women moms that am I competing against? Whereas if I can bring in my own personality, like, who I am, how the sound of our voice, how we laugh, our humor, what we believe, then we start to differentiate ourselves. And now we're no longer competing, but we are being able to hopefully build and add to and accentuate what other people are doing because we're different. When it comes to the question of politics and religion, and that's like the thing, right? You never talk about politics or religion at the dinner table, at Christmas, on your podcast, whatever. I think those lines are blurring a lot, and I love that they're blurring because it's important that you as a person stand for something. And I'm trying to keep my Hamilton references to a minimum as I'm speaking. It's hard, but if you look at Aaron Burr, he didn't stand for anything specific, and from a political standpoint, he wanted to be liked by everyone and appeal to everyone, and so he never stood his ground. And I think corporate brands, when we look at when we look at politics, when we look at the upcoming election, when we look at Black Lives Matter, when we look at LGBTQ rights, companies who don't have a stance are going to start to fall by the wayside. And individuals and personal brands that don't have a stance on something are going to I think they're going to get lost in the noise. It's up to you as a person on how frank and direct, and do you come at these issues with humor? Do you come at these issues with love? Do you slap people around with however you do that is again part of your brand personality and something that individuals have to determine for themselves. But to remain silent and to keep things, this is just business and my personal is over here, it's not going to work.
Yeah, it seems like you and I are pretty similar the way that we look at personal branding. Like, it's a large part about authenticity, but also intentionality, right?
Totally.
Do you, like, either in your own personal brand or with the clients that you work with, do you recommend or use any sort of brand guidelines, or do any sort of check-in about that? Because like we were talking about, this stuff shifts and grows. So is there like a framework or anything like that that you use to kind of help stay on track about what you want to put out there online or, in the public?
Yeah, there's a couple. There's probably 3 different exercises that I use on a regular basis. And it's interesting because while I use them on clients, I don't take the time to use them on myself as much as I should, and recently have gone through these exercises for my own personal brand. But one of them is this thing of looking at a brand umbrella. So underneath an umbrella, you stay dry, right? If you come out of an umbrella when it's raining, you're going to get wet. So if you look at your brand umbrella, and I'll just draw an umbrella and I'll put my name at the top, and then I'll put all the things that I'm working on, that I'm doing, that I love. I put, my podcast is under there, my YouTube channel. I serve women entrepreneurs, but I also work with corporations. And so you kind of throw it all up under there, and then you have to distill and say, what is still meaningful for me? What's still important? What is not benefiting my brand right now or my clients? Maybe I could take that off. What's something new that I want? If it's your, YouTube channel, I'll put that because this is new, and really just organize it. So you create this very just concise, consistent, neat looking package kind of under your umbrella. Then when something comes up, because we all have these opportunities like, hey, Mallory, you should do this, or you should start a this, or, all of these ideas, and even ideas in our own head. Let me go back to my brand umbrella. Is this something that's going to get left out in the rain? Is it going to get, forgotten about? Do I have passion for this? Can I even fit this under my umbrella? And if I fit this, do I have to take something off? So that kind of helps us just stay grounded there. The other thing, like I said at the beginning, is really starting with our heart and really setting out values. Big corporations have, for the most part, value statements or mission statements. And then even mission and value statements being two different things, but as individuals, write out your value statement. What do you value? And then when life moves and shifts, and we talk about pivoting a lot these days, you go back to your values. Does this align? And sometimes we have to have it written down. Otherwise, we get so like jumbled up in our head, or we get our emotions drive us so much. So we get super elated and excited about a new possibility that all of our work that we've laid for our personal brand kind of can go out the window, or even like our values and like, wait, I don't value this and it doesn't fit with my values. Or because of the current climate, we could get super discouraged about something that we know is our path and our purpose, and get down and depressed and frustrated. And so a lot of times we'll kick something to the curb because of how we feel in the moment. But if we go back to, this is a value statement I wrote out, whether it's on my website or not, I encourage it, but whether it's on your website or not, this is the value statement I wrote out. And I need to remember, this is part of my values. This is something that I really want to do. And I might not feel like it right now, but I'm not going to throw this away because this aligns. So you can look at it as kind of that litmus test a little bit.
Yeah. I love that idea, or that analogy of it being an umbrella. I hadn't thought about it that way, where it's like, yeah, these things are going to get left out in the rain, literally. But it's so true. So that's such a great resource. What's one resource that's really changed your life in some way? Could be a book, a movie, a person. What's something that you would, advise somebody else to check out, and why?
Oh, it's so hard to pick one. So hard. Like I probably have a list of 10 different things that have really changed my life in an incredible way, and things that I wish 10 years ago, or even 8 years ago when I had started my first company, that I knew about. But so these are random, but I'm going to give you two. One is the book, The Compound Effect.
Ooh, I'm not familiar.
Oh, it's so good. And I'm spacing the author, but if you look it up, you'll find it. It basically talks about the tiny itty bitty baby steps that we make a huge impact on our lives, how we manage our time, our health, our wealth, how we run our businesses, versus us trying to make these big grandiose changes. So anytime someone is like, "Hey, Olivia, I'm going to go vegan. I'm going vegan tomorrow." I'm like, "Are you sure?" Or why? Like, what are you doing? Because we want to make these big changes. Or I'm cutting out sugar. If you've ever tried to like just get rid of sugar or do a detox for a month, no sugar, it's so hard, and we set ourselves up for failure a lot of times. But if I were to do a tiny baby step and say, I'm just going to not eat dairy 2 days a week, that's, in our minds, we're like, well, that's not going to make an impact, but it does. Like that little thing, and if we could become consistent in it, it's the same thing with compounded interest. That tiny, 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 tiny percentage, but because it's compounded over time, it makes a huge difference, versus us being like, I'm going to try to save, $1 million for my college kids' tuition. I'm just going to save this much, and it'll have a great impact over time. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, this sounds really silly, but it's Fiverr. Fiverr has literally changed my life. And I have, branding background, but I also have done graphics and do a lot of web design and graphic design as well. So when Fiverr first came out, however many years ago, probably a good 8 years ago or something, I was appalled that people would go on Fiverr and pay $5 for a logo. I was like, what? You're going to get what you pay for. Like, I hated Fiverr. I thought it was the worst thing ever. But as I've gotten older and wiser, and as I've gotten busier, I leverage it, I want to say, at least 2 to 3 times a month to quickly and easily handle those things that I may know how to do, but take me too much time. So an example of that is, I was having some PHP issues on a WordPress site that I had built for a client years ago. And I don't even build websites for clients anymore, but this was a client years ago. And she was like, I just don't know what's happening. And I was like, oh, I'll take a look. And I spent 2 hours in the back PHP, and I'm not as good at it anymore. And it takes too much time, and I have other things I need to do. Whereas I went on Fiverr and I found someone for $10 who was able to tweak this code that had messed up from an update and fix everything in a matter of hours. And it just, that is amazing. I do it for a lot of things. I use Fiverr for a lot of things.
That's awesome. I'm familiar with Fiverr, but I definitely haven't gone down that rabbit hole of using it as much either. So that's really good to know.
I love it. And someone said to me too, this was a couple of years ago, how much is your time worth? And what is your hourly rate? So if let's say your hourly rate is $100, how much is it worth for you to hire someone at $25 an hour to do something that they can easily do where it's costing you $100 an hour to do it? And I just never even thought about it that way. The one thing that I have not transferred that to is my home life and personal life of, hiring someone to come in and clean once a month, deep clean, or hiring someone to cook or anything like that. But again, that question goes, if I'm going to go grocery shopping, this is a good one, especially with quarantine and stuff, is finally leveraging all of the grocery delivery options that are out there. Because if it costs me an hour, if I'm $100 an hour, it's costing $100 to go grocery shopping, where I can hire someone to do that for me and it's costing me a $10 delivery fee or whatever.
Yeah, I have a friend who like outsources all of that stuff. She like hires people to come pick up like the dog poop in the backyard and everything.
It's amazing. And as long as you're making money in that time frame, right? So you're like, I'm going to take this time and energy and actually turn it into income producing activities, then it makes it totally worth it.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self or to your younger self at some other point?
My 20-year-olds, I would say simply that nothing will go as planned, and that's the plan. That's it. Nothing will go as planned. And it's not even just okay. I think at one point in time, I was like, I would tell my younger self, like, you'll be okay. It'll be okay. And when things don't work out as planned, it will be okay. But I truly believe that things never work out as planned. And that's the whole plan, is that they don't work out that way. And I thank God that parts and situations in my life didn't go the way I wanted them to, because I wouldn't be who I am and where I am today.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, the stuff I've learned the most from was the stuff that felt the hardest in the moment.
Right.
Yeah. So Olivia, where can people find you and connect with you online? Obviously your podcast, right?
Yeah, so I'm in a lot of places, but I would say go to oliviaomega.com, and that's kind of where you can find information about my book, my podcast, my YouTube channel. All of the things are there.
Cool. Thank you so much, Olivia.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
You too.